What is your name and when were you born?
Michael J. Price, September 3rd, 1937.
What are some characteristics of the town where you grew up?
I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, which is in suburban Boston, and then in 1944 we moved to Boston, Massachusetts. A lot of education, Boston University, Harvard. We always had a family car. My dad was a good driver, my mother was a horrible driver, so he did most of the driving.
How did the lingering effects of the Depression affect you as a child?
Our family was fairly comfortable, and we didn't have any unemployment, but there was an awareness of the hard times that there was during the Depression, and my parents were pretty frugal. We didn't waste money.
What kind of school did you go through?
When we moved from Newton, Massachusetts to Boston, Massachusetts, the public schools in Boston were not good in the area where we lived. And my parents sent me to an all-boys private school where I started in the 3rd grade, went right through high school there. The school was called Brown and Nichols. It was in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Describe an experience in school that really stands out to you.
One of the things about the school which I liked very much was that sports were required all 3 seasons. As I grew older, I played football in the fall, I wrestled in the winter, and I rode crew in the spring.
What was your first job like?
My parents had a family business, some clothing stores, and I used to go into the office and distribution center, shipping, tagging, sweeping the floor, anything that my dad would pay me a few dollars for.
What wars did you experience directly?
The Cuban Missile Crisis, which took place after Korea and before Vietnam, I ended up joining the Marine Corps. I worked for a while for a department store in Boston called Feline's, and didn't like my job and didn't like living at home, and went to OCS after college and was in the Marine Corps for 3.5 years. While I was in the Marine Corps, the Cuban Missile Crisis developed, and my specific association therewith was I was embarkation officer for my battalion, which was an anti-aircraft missile battalion in California, and we airlifted the entire battalion and equipment from Northern California to Florida in preparation for a potential invasion of Cuba to end the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev pulled the missiles, and it didn't happen.
Describe life in the Marine Corps.
Life in the Marine Corps initially is demanding insofar as you say to yourself, did I really do this as a volunteer? Which I did. You go through boot camp or OCS. They attempt to strip all the civilian out of you and reform you into a soldier. And they did it, and they do it well.
How did the war change life in America at the time of and also after the war was over?
Concerned that the Russians and possibly the Chinese would invade or do an atomic attack, and people were building fallout shelters in their basements and elsewhere. There was a constant level of paranoia whereby we were always ready for a potential attack. We had some emergency food supplies, water supplies, clothing, fuel.
What are some big events or news stories that you remember well?
I remember Kennedy's assassination, which came as a tremendous shock to the whole country. It was not a partisan election to elect him. He was a very popularly elected, and the nation mourned tremendously for Kennedy. Through the Bay of Pigs scenario, President Johnson, who succeeded him, got us deeper into Vietnam. That whole thing escalated, and as history shows, it was a war that lasted a long time and accomplished very little.
Are there any new inventions you remember that significantly changed daily life?
Right after World War II, television, people would gather, one person in the neighborhood would have a TV, and everybody would go over and watch the programs, which weren't of the best quality, but were fun. Clearly in recent years, the computer age changed so many things, changed so many businesses, eliminated a lot of the simpler jobs.
What are you most proud of in your life? Is there something you wish you could change?
It's there. History cannot be rewritten, despite what the editorialists try to do. I would probably have taken some time off after the service and gone exploring in Alaska. My wife got pregnant at the time, and I had to put on the traces and start hauling the wagon. This is my better half. We were married on June 11th, 1961.